What if I told you that the very food you've been terrified of for years, the one staple your doctor, your fitness apps, and every diabetes headline told you to cut out doesn't have to be your enemy? For most seniors in America, being told to just stop eating rice feels like losing a piece of your history, your comfort, and your sanity. It's exhausting to sit at a Sunday family dinner in Texas or a holiday gathering in Florida, staring at a bowl of cauliflower substitute while everyone else enjoys the real thing. You feel deprived, and let's be honest, your blood sugar often spikes anyway because of the stress and the hidden carbs you eat to fill that void. I'm Dr. Grant Colby, and after clinical years of working with patients who felt defeated by their glucose monitors, I've discovered that rice itself isn't the villain, it's the chemistry of how we prepare it. There is a specific science-backed protocol involving 5 distinct methods that can transform rice from a blood sugar nightmare into a manageable, enjoyable part of your life. We're talking about techniques that can drop your post-meal readings by 40% without changing the grain itself. Stick with me until the end of this video, because the 5th method regarding biological timing is the ultimate game changer that most people get completely wrong. You don't have to say goodbye to rice, you just have to learn the new rules of the game. I recently sat down with a patient named Martha, a 71-year-old woman from South Carolina who had been managing her type 2 diabetes for over a decade. The moment she sat in my office, I could see the sheer exhaustion in her eyes, not just from the disease, but from the deprivation. "Dr. Colby," she told me, her voice trembling slightly, "I've followed every rule. I haven't touched a grain of rice in nearly a year because my doctor said it was like eating pure sugar." She showed me her glucose logs. On the rare occasions she gave in to a small scoop of rice at a family barbecue, her readings would skyrocket to 220 or 230. To avoid the guilt, she spent her dinners eating flavorless cauliflower rice while her grandkids enjoyed the real thing. She felt isolated at her own dinner table. For Martha, rice wasn't just a side dish, it was a connection to her heritage and her childhood. When we tell seniors they can never have the foods they love, one of 2 things happens. They either live in a state of constant misery and deprivation, or they binge in secret and feel like a failure. Neither helps control blood sugar. I told Martha exactly what I'm telling you. Rice isn't the problem how you prepare it, what you pair it with, and when you eat, it is what determines if your sugar hits 250 or stays stable at 140. If this struggle sounds familiar, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because we are about to break down the first of 5 methods that changed Martha's life forever. Martha looked skeptical when I told her she could eat rice again. Like many of you, she had tried switching to brown rice, but her glucose monitor still showed those frustrating spikes. I explained to her that the solution isn't just about the color of the grain, it's about a metabolic shift in how your body processes starch. We implemented 5 specific, science-backed methods that changed the game. Within 6 weeks, her 2-hour post-meal readings dropped from the 210s to a manageable 155 or 165. 3 months later, her A1C fell from 8.1 to 7.5, not because she stopped eating, but because she felt less deprived and more in control. It wasn't about perfection. It was about a framework that actually works for the human body. The first method sounds almost too simple to be true, but the biochemistry behind it is incredibly solid. To make rice diabetic-friendly, you must cook it, then cool it completely in the refrigerator for at least 12 hours before eating it. This cooling period initiates a process called starch retrogradation, which fundamentally changes the molecular structure of the grain. During this time, a significant portion of the digestible starch converts into what we call resistant starch. Think of resistant starch as a hybrid between a carbohydrate and a fiber. Unlike regular starch, which your digestive enzymes quickly break down into glucose, resistant starch resists digestion in the small intestine. It passes through to the large intestine, where it acts as a prebiotic, feeding the beneficial bacteria in your gut. Because your body cannot absorb it as quickly, the glucose enters your bloodstream at a much slower, more controlled pace. Scientific studies have demonstrated that consuming cooled and then reheated rice can reduce the post-meal blood sugar response by as much as 30% to 40% compared to eating it freshly cooked. That is often the difference between a dangerous spike to 220 and a manageable rise to 150. Take the case of Arthur, a 72-year-old veteran from Ohio who had avoided his favorite fried rice for 3 years because of his diagnosis. We started him on the cooling method. He would cook a large batch of rice on Sunday, let it reach room temperature, and then store it in portioned containers in the fridge for at least 12 hours. When he was ready to eat, he would reheat it thoroughly. The beautiful thing about this chemistry is that the resistant starch remains even after reheating. When Arthur finally tested a cup of this reheated rice with his dinner, his 2-hour reading was 168, exactly 50 points lower than his previous results with fresh rice. The second method is about shifting your focus from the rice itself to what you eat alongside it. You must never eat rice alone or as the primary component of your plate. Instead, you should always pair it with significant amounts of lean protein and healthy fats. This is because protein and fat act as natural brakes for your digestive system. When you consume rice by itself, it moves through your stomach and small intestine rapidly, breaking down into glucose and hitting your bloodstream like a tidal wave. However, when you introduce chicken, fish, eggs, or even healthy fats like avocado and olive oil, the entire process slows down significantly. This slower digestion ensures that glucose enters your circulation gradually rather than all at once, preventing those sharp, dangerous spikes. Furthermore, protein triggers a more appropriate insulin response to manage the incoming glucose load. I recommend a specific ratio. For every half cup of rice, you should include at least 4 to 6 ounces of protein and a healthy serving of fat. This effectively turns the rice into a side dish rather than the main event. Consider Sarah, a 67-year-old from Arizona who used to eat rice only with steamed vegetables, thinking she was being healthy. Despite her best intentions, her post-meal readings were consistently over 200. We restructured her meals using the same half cup of rice, but added a palm-sized portion of grilled chicken and half an avocado. By simply adding that protein and fat, her next reading was 158. She was actually eating more food, yet her blood sugar was lower because the metabolic impact had changed. If this insight is helpful, please comment "good" below. Or if you want me to share more tips like this video to give me the motivation to create more content on this topic. The third method is perhaps the most difficult for many to accept, but it is entirely non-negotiable if you want to master your glucose levels. Your portion of rice needs to be significantly smaller than what you are likely used to. For most seniors managing diabetes, the maximum safe portion is just half a cup of cooked rice per meal. I know how that sounds. Half a cup looks incredibly small when placed in the center of a large dinner plate. It fits roughly in the palm of your hand and is nowhere near the heaping mounds traditionally served in many households. However, this specific volume is what allows your metabolic system to handle the glucose load without a dangerous spike. Take George, a 70-year-old from Chicago who insisted that 2 cups of rice was a normal serving because that is how he had eaten his entire life. His post-meal blood sugar was routinely 240 or higher. He was resistant at first, claiming half a cup was nothing, but we tried a new approach. We paired that half cup of cooled rice with 6 ounces of baked salmon, roasted vegetables in olive oil, and a large side salad. When he checked in 2 weeks later, he admitted he felt satisfied, not stuffed, and his blood sugar had dropped to 172. You can use every other method in this book, but if you eat 2 cups of rice, you will still spike. Control the portion, and you control the outcome. The 4th method focuses on the specific type of grain you put in your pot, because not all rice affects your blood sugar in the same way. Short-grain white rice is generally the most problematic for diabetics, as its high starch content breaks down rapidly and sends glucose levels soaring. However, you don't have to switch to expensive substitutes to find a better option. Basmati rice, available in both white and brown varieties, is the gold standard for glucose management because of its long-grain structure and lower glycemic index. It digests more slowly, providing a steadier release of energy rather than a sharp peak. While many people believe brown rice is a free food because of its fiber content, the reality is more nuanced. Brown rice is certainly better than standard white rice, but it is still primarily a carbohydrate and can cause significant spikes if you ignore portion sizes or preparation methods. If you want even better results, consider wild rice, which is technically a grass seed. It contains more protein and has a much lower glycemic impact than true rice varieties. I recall a patient named Helen from Seattle who had switched to brown rice years ago but was frustrated that her readings still hit 190. She felt like she was doing everything right but getting the wrong results. When we moved her to basmati rice and combined it with the cooling and portion control methods we've discussed, her post-meal reading finally dropped to 152. She realized that while the type of rice matters, it is the entire system of preparation and choice that creates success. For the best results, stick with basmati, preferably brown basmati, and always treat it as part of the 5-step protocol. The 5th method revolves around timing, because your body's ability to process glucose is not constant throughout the day. For most seniors, insulin sensitivity is typically at its peak in the morning and early afternoon, while it reaches its lowest point in the evening. This means that for a diabetic, eating rice at dinner is often the worst possible choice. When you consume a carbohydrate-heavy meal late at night, your body is less efficient at processing it, and because you are likely inactive soon after, that elevated blood sugar sits high for hours while you sleep. The ideal time to enjoy rice is at lunch. At midday, your metabolism is still relatively active, and you have the entire afternoon to move around and utilize that glucose for energy. The most dangerous scenario is consuming rice as part of a late dinner and heading to bed within 2 hours. This creates a spike that lingers overnight, affecting your fasting readings the next morning and setting you up for a difficult, high-glucose day. Take the case of Carol from Georgia, who ate rice every night at 7 p.m. and went to bed at 10 p.m. Her morning readings were consistently high, and she felt sluggish all day. We didn't change her portion or her preparation. We simply moved her rice from 7 p.m. to 1 p.m. Her bedtime blood sugar improved by 35 points, and her morning fasting numbers dropped significantly. If you found this timing strategy eye-opening, please like this video and share it with a friend who might be struggling with their morning numbers. Moving your rice to lunch could be the simplest change with the biggest impact. Beyond the physical spikes in glucose, there is a hidden psychological toll that total deprivation takes on your health. I want to tell you about Patricia, a 64-year-old grandmother from Chicago. For 8 years, she lived in a state of carb phobia, believing that even a single spoonful of rice would ruin her health. But here is the irony. Because she felt so deprived and restricted, she often found herself binging on processed crackers or sugary, diabetic-friendly snacks late at night. The stress of saying no to the foods she loved actually triggered cortisol spikes, which made her blood sugar even harder to manage. When we introduced the 5 methods and gave her permission to eat rice again, something remarkable happened. Her compulsive snacking vanished. By having that half cup of cooled basmati rice at lunch, paired with salmon and healthy fats, she felt emotionally and physically satisfied for the first time in nearly a decade. She stopped seeing food as the enemy and started seeing it as fuel that she finally knew how to handle. Her A1C didn't just drop because of the resistant starch, it dropped because the cycle of restriction and binging had finally been broken. 15 years of diabetes had taught her that rice was a failure, but Patricia proved that with the right science, it's actually a tool for sustainability. Managing this disease is a marathon, and you cannot win if you are constantly fighting against your own culture and comfort. I want to challenge you to try this for the next 30 days. Start small. Pick just 1 meal per week where you'll have rice prepared using all 5 methods we've discussed. Cook it and cool it for 12 hours. Keep the portion to half a cup. Pair it with plenty of fiber and protein, and eat it at lunch. Track your blood sugar before and 2 hours after. See the data for yourself. If your numbers stay stable, you can slowly increase to twice a week, but always stick to the protocol. I make these videos because I believe managing diabetes should be about living a full, vibrant life, not about constant restriction and fear. You don't have to give up the foods that connect you to your family and your heritage. You just have to learn to eat them differently. Please remember that while these strategies are based on clinical science, every body is unique. Always consult with your own healthcare provider before making significant changes to your diet or medication. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and for your ongoing support of this mission to simplify diabetes health. If you found this information life-changing, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming deep dives into senior wellness. Your health is your greatest wealth, and it's an honor to be part of your journey. I'm Dr. Grant Colby. Take care of yourself, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next video.